This is the CBS Evening News with Roger Mudd substituting for Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. The papal ring, the fisherman's ring, depicting the authority of Pope Paul VI, was destroyed today with a hammer and a chisel. A new ring will be made for his successor, to be chosen by 115 cardinals from throughout the world. The pontiff died yesterday, just a month short of his 81st birthday. We have reports from Jerry Bowen and Bert Quint.
The body of Pope Paul VI lay in state in the Swiss room of the Pontifical Palace at Castel Gandolfo, the summer residence of the popes. The body was dressed in the red and white robes of the pontiff. A rosary was entwined in the fingers of his hands. At his left side lay the silver crucifix he had used throughout his life. 4 Swiss guards stood at attention in the tapestried room, where one candle gave light to the mourners, mostly people from the hills around the palace, who were permitted to pay their respects today. At one point, more than 2,000 people waited outside the palace, singing and praying under a severe sun. Overhead, the pontifical flag flew at half-staff from the balcony where Pope Paul delivered his Sunday blessings during his 15-year reign. Today, more than 10,000 people entered the palace to see his body. At the small cathedral, which shares the main square of Castel Gandolfo with the Pope's summer palace, there was a mass and special prayer for the late pontiff, a prayer for the man who, over the last year, often said he saw the threshold of the beyond approaching. The pontiff's body will continue to lie in state here at the palace through tomorrow, to be moved to St. Peter's Basilica on Wednesday. Present plans call for the funeral to be conducted on Saturday, with many of the world's leaders or their representatives to be in attendance. Jerry Bowen, CBS News, Castel Gandolfo.
There has been no great outpouring of the faithful to mourn at St. Peter's Basilica. You see the same groups of tourists you always do, visiting this center of Roman Catholicism. There are few signs of emotion or of public activity. But behind the walls of the Vatican, the cardinals who were in Rome or who arrived here since the Pope died quietly are installing themselves as caretakers of the Church. French Cardinal Jean Villot, as papal chamberlain, will preside over them until the new Pope is elected. The electoral conclave cannot open until after a 9-day mourning period starting next Saturday, when the Pope is buried in the grottos under St. Peter's. That means balloting won't begin before August 21st. Throughout the country, churches are beginning to celebrate Requiem Masses. St. Peter's, besides being the most important church for the world's 540 million Roman Catholics, is the Church of the Vatican. There, too, a Requiem Mass was held tonight. An unceremonious one with only one cardinal present and hundreds of tourists. A simple Mass for the soul of a man who took pleasure in greeting people from distant lands. Bert Quint, CBS News, Vatican City.
At St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York, as well as at churches throughout the world, special memorial masses also were held today to mourn the death of Pope Paul. In New York, Archbishop Cardinal Cook celebrated the Mass. Attending it were Senator Edward Kennedy, New York Governor Hugh Carey, and New York City Mayor Edward Koch, among others.
A Mercedes versus a Granada. Vancouver, a $22,000 Mercedes versus a Ford Granada Ghia. How did they compare for smoothness and quietness of ride? Vibration and interior sound level tests showed both cars rode with virtually the same level of smoothness. And Granada rode almost as quietly as Mercedes. Average only 1 decibel higher. A Ford Granada Ghia. Smoothness and quietness close to a Mercedes at a Granada Ghia price. Test drive Granada at your Ford dealer, where the better ideas keep coming.
All the guys that do commercials for light beer from Miller are big stars and guys like that. Me, I'm just a humble bartender, but I drink light too. And I'll tell you why. It's less filling, it's got 1/3 less calories than a regular beer, and it tastes great.
Jerry, now that you're a big star, can I have your autograph?
Well, sure, Mr. Dangerfield.
Hey, would you like mine?
Not really.
Light beer from Miller. Everything you always wanted in a beer, and less.
How about my initials?
With the Pope's death, attention now is focused on who will become the 262nd successor to St. Peter as Bishop of Rome. One possible candidate, 73-year-old Cardinal Franz Koenig of Austria, said in Vienna today he does not deem himself suitable. He suggested that a younger man is needed. He added that a black or an Asian pope is a possibility. The last non-Italian pope was Hadrian VI of Holland in the 16th century. With more on the successor story, Winston Burdett reports from Vatican City.
The passage of supreme power in the Church is always an awesome moment. What determines the election of a pope? What are the qualifications for the office? Dramatically today, there exists the real possibility of a non-Italian pope, the prospect that a foreign pope may be elected. For example, Cardinal Jean Villot, a Frenchman. As Secretary of State, he has been the Pope's Prime Minister and the second man in the Vatican. Long experience at the headquarters of the Church, thorough knowledge of the papal administration and bureaucracy, these are important attributes. A Dutch churchman of weight and authority, Cardinal Johannes Willebrands, the Primate of Holland. Behind him are years of Vatican experience in a role of paramount importance, head of the Secretariat for Christian Unity, leader of the dialogue between Catholics, Protestants, and Eastern Orthodox. Outstanding among the Italians is Cardinal Sergio Pignedoli, a tried and tested prelate of the Roman Curia, a longtime intimate friend of Pope Paul, and a man of world affairs. Outstanding also is the man who is the Pope's vicar for his own diocese, the city of Rome, Cardinal Ugo Politi, an executive of the First Order, an organizer and a doer, a liberal in social affairs, a traditionalist in religious outlook. Politi has sought to rally the Catholics of Rome in a campaign to improve the social conditions of this ill-governed city. Cardinal Giovanni Benelli, Archbishop of Florence, who for 10 years was the Vatican's most powerful executive officer. As Under-Secretary of State, Benelli was in fact the Pope's chief of operations at the Vatican, supervising and coordinating in the Pope's name the activities of all the Vatican ministries and departments. Cardinal Sebastiano Baggio, an Italian with many solid qualifications, a diplomat who has held major posts in Chile, Canada, Brazil, and elsewhere, a pastoral leader who has headed the important Italian Archdiocese of Cagliari, and today his role is one of central importance in the Roman Church as head of the Vatican's Congregation of the Bishops. And what are the chances of a pope from the Third World? One name at once presents itself, that of Cardinal Eduardo Pironio of Argentina, a Third World representative who is also a European, a man of Italian descent. Pironio has been personally and energetically immersed in the political turbulence of Latin America and in the spiritual turbulence of the Latin American Church. There is one overriding political consideration that automatically excludes from the papacy the cardinals of the United States. On the international scene, the Pope cannot be a marked man. He must not be identified with a great power, still less with a superpower. The words we commonly use to describe papal candidates, words like liberal and conservative, progressive and traditionalist, these are rough labels, usually ill-fitting and nearly always misleading. Pope John was an old-fashioned man in many ways who threw open the windows of the church to the fresh air of new times. Pope Paul was a modern man in many ways whose deepest instinct and concern was to defend, to protect, to conserve the total heritage of his church, its faith, its dogma, its unity under papal supremacy, against the hostile tumult of the times. What will the change really mean? Will it dismantle and subvert the entire edifice or reinforce it? Will it bring rejuvenation and renewal or breakup, dispersion and decline? These are questions that are at the heart of the tension in the Catholic Church today, in every sphere, from dogma and moral behavior to the central government of the Church and the authority of the Pope. They are questions that harassed Pope Paul, and they will harass his successor. But the next pope will be a different kind of man, of different character and temperament, and he will seek different answers. The critical moment is a long moment in the Church's life, ambiguous and fateful. And no doubt, in the perspective of history, the choice of Pope Paul's successor will be a momentous choice. Winston Burdett, CBS News, Vatican City.
Pope Paul's 15-year tenure was not without controversy, and he was not without detractors. Paul Johnson, a leading Catholic writer in Britain, said today that Pope Paul had put the Church on the brink of disaster by alienating both conservatives and liberals. Johnson predicted that the late Pope might be the last of the absolute papal sovereigns. In Chicago, Bob Faw talked with another leading Catholic writer about possible successors to Pope Paul.
Father Andrew Greeley, nationally syndicated columnist and Vatican observer, predicts the next pope will be a consensus figure, not a liberal or a conservative, but someone in the middle, like Sebastiano Cardinal Baggio from Italy.
Well, Baggio is certainly the one who, if you had to pick a winter book favorite now, would be the favorite. He's in his middle 60s. He's head of the Congregation of Bishops. He's urbane, witty, sophisticated, competent administrator. I think people would say he was a moderate on theological positions. Hardly an intellectual, but still open-minded and pleasant. Most people could live with Cardinal Baggio as Pope.
Many Catholic liberals, like Greeley, considered Pope Paul VI a brooding, austere, even anguished figure, and say that now a different style is needed.
But I think now we need to switch back to a style more like Pope John's, a style of confidence, of charisma, of radiant personal charm. And that's what they should look for. I think they may know this. They may know that the pressures and the anxieties have built up so fantastically in the Church that they need somebody who can release and diffuse some of those pressures.
Because there is no clear-cut favorite, Greeley anticipates the selection procedure will be a lengthy one. Bob Fall, CBS News, Chicago.